Hey folks, Zeke here, and in today's video, I want to show you guys the cheapest RAW cinema camera that money can buy, and why I believe it's such a great choice for budget filmmaking in today's world. But before we begin, here is a quick sketch of what we will be looking at in today's video. Number 1, why the Canon EOS M for video. Number 2, the RAW video capabilities and crop factors of the Canon EOS M. Number 3, how to install Magic Lantern. 4, the best EOS M settings for shooting RAW video. At number 5, we're going to look at editing or grading DNG RAW files through DaVinci Resolve. And then number 6, my final thoughts of the Canon EOS M as a RAW video camera. Alright, so here's the question, why the Canon EOS M for RAW video in 2020 and beyond? Well, to begin, it is the cheapest mirrorless camera right now that sells for around $200 and can shoot both uncompressed and lossless RAW video internally up to 14-bit. The RAW picture quality is super with those gorgeous Canon colors and film-like look that can make the camera look like it was shot on a more expensive high-end camera. I grew up watching movies from the 80s and 90s like Toy Soldiers, The Neverending Story or The Goonies, and for a camera that has video capabilities to replicate close to those kind of looks is an absolute dream come true. The Canon EOS M is small and tiny, so you can have a filmmaking tool right in your pocket and take it wherever you go and shoot to your heart's content. Like every other camera, there are some drawbacks that we need to mention, and with the Canon EOS M there are some aliasing in the 1080 mode. The camera also doesn't support dual pixel autofocus, you're stuck with contrast based autofocus. However, it's by learning to deal with the limitations that you learn to grow and appreciate what you have and learn to be more creative in dealing with the limitations. Now before we get into installing Magic Lantern RAW on the Canon EOS M, let's talk about the different crop factors in the available RAW video modes. As you can see, when Magic Lantern is installed, you have a range of different RAW video options. In 1080 mode, we have the normal 1.6 Canon crop. In 2.5K mode, we have a 3.29 times. 2.8K has a 2.96 times crop, which is very similar to the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, the original one, or the Canon EOS M50 in the 4K mode. In the 5K FRTP or for real-time preview mode, we have a 2 times crop, which is equivalent to, say, the Blackmagic Pocket 4K or the other Micro Four Thirds cameras. Now for the large crop factors, like in 2.8K or 2.5K mode, I tend to use stabilized wide-angle lenses along with speed boosters like the Canon 10-18, the Canon 18-135, or even the Sigma Art 18-35mm. There is also a range of different wide-angle lenses that help to combat the crop factors and make shooting more versatile on this camera. Alright, so now it's time to install Magic Lantern RAW, and I just want to say this is completely up to you. It's your choice if you want to delve into this. I've been using it for more than 2 years now and have put it absolutely through its paces in hot climates and snow, rainy weather. This camera has been unbreakable throughout its journey. Now to install, you can download the Magic Lantern build from the developer's website and it will have the date and the firmware required, in this case firmware 2.0.2. And just to make it straightforward that the firmware is installed on the SD card and not into the camera, so if you change SD cards, there's going to be no Magic Lantern RAW, only on the SD card that you have installed it on. So once you've downloaded the zip, extract it and copy the 3 files including the folder and paste it into your SD card. Once you've done that, on your Canon EOS M, you need to be in the stills mode in order to update your firmware. So go ahead, update the firmware in camera, and then you're pretty much done. Now if you want to save some time, go ahead and download my build in the description below, and once you've installed that, it will have all my settings that I'm going to explain in this video. Now the SD cards that I recommend for Magic Lantern RAW are the SanDisk Extreme Pro, the 170MB per second versions. Any other card, they're not going to do so fine, so just stick with the SanDisk Extreme Pro. Make sure that they're trusted sellers or get them locally, just to avoid some fake copies. Alright, so now it's time to look at the Magic Lantern RAW settings that I use, and I'm pretty much going to go through each different mode, like the 1080, 2.5K, 2.8K, and the 5K FRTP, and I'm going to explain very simply and to a T what they're all about, so let's go ahead and check it out. Alright guys, so here's my Canon EOS M. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and Magic Lantern has just been installed. Alright, so once you've installed it, this is exactly what it comes up with. All your information is down towards the bottom. You got your bit depth, so I'm shooting 14-bit, and I've got my mode, so HD 1080p, shooting at 16mm. I've got the Sigma 18-35, but it's on a speed booster, and it's shooting at f1.2 aperture. I've got 1/50th of a shutter, 100 ISO, white balance, so all your information is down there, 23.98 FPS, and then you got your total memory, so I'm using a 512GB SD card. And then your battery life and what mode you're in, so I'm using manual focus. So to enter the Magic Lantern menu, all you got to do is hold the trash can button and that will take you straight to the menu. Now in the Magic Lantern menu you've got all these different tabs. So you've got the exposure tab where you control ISO, white balance, your shutter, aperture, and the picture profile, which doesn't really affect raw video, only the photos or the in-baked H.264. And you've got dual ISO, exposure override. Now for me, I like to set my white balance to 5400 and click set, and then just scroll down to 5400. Shutter speed can be controlled from here as well, and then your aperture as well. Next tab is all about overlays. So global draw is set to live view. This is your live view. If you disable that, then nothing will appear in your live view. You'll have no information there. For my zebras, we're going to set that to 100%. I've also got focus peak that doesn't really work too well, so I'm going to stay away from that. Magic zoom allows you to get critical focus with a small focus aid box, and you can change the size of it if you like, just over here with the magnification and then the size. Then you got crop marks, you can do overlays and stuff like that. Histogram, set that to linear. Then you have the waveform option as well. I generally just stick to the histogram, and then you can see it just over here. It says over, which means I'm overexposed. Then you have your movie tab, and if you scroll through, you have all your other different tabs which you can explore. In this tab over here, you can pretty much check your shutter count. So if you get a new EOS M, you can see how much it's been used, and it'll show down here shutter count is 14K, so still pretty good, and it's going to last you a really long time. Alright, so movie tab, this is where all the magic happens. This is where the raw video takes place. Presets, you got HD 1080p, and then you got a whole range of different ones. So if I select HD 1080p, then I'm going to have to go through here and set it up myself. Another way to get quick settings on the go is by just tapping on the screen once, and it says start off presets. So if you select one of these, it'll automatically give you the best settings possible for each of these modes. Alright, so this is the movie tab. This is where all the magic happens and the raw video takes place. And the important things that you need to know are the presets, the raw video, ratio, and bit depth. So for presets, you can pretty much choose the one that you want. So you have two HD modes, HD 1080p and HD 1080p with higher frame rates. So this is more for like slow motion or just high FPS in general. So for normal YouTube stuff and just general video with 1.6 times crop factor, I tend to stick to 1080p. Then the next mode I'll use is the 2.5K with the 2520 by 1480 resolution. You can shoot 3K RAW, but that's limited to 18 frames per second, so I tend to skip that one and go straight to 2.8K RAW, which shoots 24 frames per second. And then if you go down here, you got 2.5K RAW if you're using a monitor, as it says HDMI. There's also a 2K RAW option, which is continuous RAW if you need that, and then a 5K anamorphic for real-time preview, and then a 5K anamorphic mode for real-time preview. So it's called anamorphic because it's usually stretched in the live view. However, with this advanced mode, the FRTB mode, the live view is now unstretched. It doesn't look anamorphic like, it's all just normal and perfect. So this would also be my option for like short films or B-roll or YouTube. Also to mention that this is a 1:3 binning mode. It's not true 5K. It's like an upscale to 5K in post. Now over down here you got custom modes. So pretty much like Sony cameras, you know, you got C1, C2 or GH cameras. You can pretty much assign each custom mode with a preset. So if I select custom mode 1, I'm going to go ahead and restart. Okay, so custom mode 1 has now been set to HD 1080 mode. So for raw video, if I tap that, you can see down here that it's continuous recording. It says OK, and you can obviously reduce your resolution if you're not getting enough record time, and that will obviously mean you get a larger crop factor. Aspect ratio, I can change it to 185, 2:1, or 4:3 if I'm doing anamorphic, and I just tend to leave that at 16:9, and then preview set to real time. Now if your recording ever stops, you can do movie restart. So if your frame drops or if the camera stops recording, it will just restart recording without you actually pressing the record button. Now you also have a ratio override option here, so if you want to override your aspect ratio to one of these, you definitely can. I just tend to leave that off for now. Bit depth, you can do 10-bit, 12-bit, or if you select off, it's automatically set to 14-bit lossless. Set 25 FPS override, this will override your current frame rate to 25 frames per second. Select shutter lock on, so you got your shutter down here, and if you move the wheel by accident, it's going to go back to your original shutter. Shutter fine tuning, if you click set, you can get a 1/48 of a shutter. This just helps fine tune your shutter as it says. And then go back to the first tab, and you can see shutter 1/48 of a second and 180 degree rule. In the display tab, you can do kill GUI, which just takes off, you know, overlay information over here. So I took off the 3x3 grid. In the high resolution modes, there's like these arrows when you crop in, and it just gets rid of those. So we'll take a look at that later on in the video. LV Digic Peaking just helps over sharpen what you focus on, and it just helps with clarity when you're focusing on your subject. This is like the best alternative to focus peaking. If you can use this as a webcam, you can do clear overlays. So if you select always, all the information on your whole screen is absolutely gone. So definitely good for like webcam and stuff like that. Got defishing mode if you have fisheye lenses, and then anamorphic, so you got, your disc-squeeze functions over here. Now if you mucked up everything and you're not happy with your settings, you can go to the prefs options and select config options, then go down to restore Magic Lantern defaults, which will pretty much restore everything that you've done, all your custom modes, to default. Live view display presets gives you different live view overlays, so I can go ahead and select live view presets too. So if I go back to the live view and then press info, you can see that all my overlay stuff in the second tab have disappeared. That's because I'm in a new live view. So with that second live view, I can set different settings like false color, and if I press menu, there you go, false color. And then if I want to go back to the previous live view with all my settings, just press info again, and then there you go, I got histogram and all my other stuff in my first live view. And then go back to the second live view by info, and there you go, I can set my settings up that way. Now if I go back to the LV display, I can have up to 4 different live views. For now, I'm just going to stick with 2. Alright, so back to the movie tab, my custom mode is set to 1080p, and if I go all the way down here, you can see sound recording, 48 kHz, customized buttons. This is very important. If you want to punch in your 1080 footage and get a ×3 crop, if you're using C-mount lenses, go ahead and click set. So if you press the set button, it's going to zoom in 3 times, and then press set again to zoom back out. This is a great option for wildlife and stuff like that. Focus aid you don't really need. Gain, so if you press the up or down button, you can adjust the aperture only, or the ISO only, or aperture plus ISO. So if I press up, it's going to change the aperture. If I press down, it's going to change the ISO. I never change the ISO, I always leave it at 100 ISO, so I just tend to leave that at aperture only. Now drop down list, so if I go back to the live view and just tap the screen once, you can see all your presets in a flash. And if I want to choose, say, 5K anamorphic FRTP mode, press set, and it will pretty much give me the best settings for that mode. Or if I press 2.8K, it's going to go ahead and set up 2.8K RAW for me on the go. And then tap it again, and then go back to the HD 1080 mode. So that's the beauty of the drop down list. Over here you have SD overclock, so if you're not getting much record time or if it's dropping, you can change it to from off to 192 MHz or 240 MHz, which is good for 2.8K RAW mode. It doesn't really work well for the others. 192 is the best SD overclock. So that's it for custom mode 1, which has been set to HD 1080 mode, and all these settings down here are pretty much the exact same settings I'd use in all different presets like 2.5K, 2.8K. Now there's different custom RAW modes that you can set yourself, like custom mode 2, 3 and 4, you can set to like 2.8K and stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and set up those custom modes for you. You can download the build in the description below, but I'm just going to go through the different presets that I've set up and just walk you through the best settings for those presets. So the next preset I'd use is the 2.5K. And as you can see, it has a crop in the screen. That's because it's cropping into the sensor and it's adding an extra crop, as we mentioned before. Now these arrows are from the Canon firmware, and to get rid of them, all you do is go over here to the display tab and select kill GUI, and this pretty much kills the Canon graphics elements. So those arrows are now gone. You get a nice clean live view. So obviously it's cropped into my Mac screen just over there, and then I can go ahead, press the trash can button and check the resolution. So 2.5K RAW, tap on that, we can shoot 16:9. Now over here you can change your preview, so it's real time right now, or I can change to framing, so it'll give me the exact framing of what I'm exactly capturing without the crop. So that's exactly what you're going to get in post, this exact framing. Now it's a bit of a hassle changing from framing to real time. There is a quick way, and this is how you do it. You just go down over here to customize buttons, info selectable, and then select info 1. Set that, back to menu, and then if I press the info button, it's going to change between real time and then framing. So real time is where I focus, and then I just press the info button to double check my framing and then hit the record button. Now this is a large resolution, so you're not going to get much record time. The trick for high resolution is to select bit depth and always enable 10-bit. Then I select my quick ratio option and do 2.35 to 1. Press the menu for it to reset. and then press info button to switch between real time and then framing. Framing is a bit jerky because it's showing your actual raw frames, whereas the real time is just quick and fast, and it's appearing green, which means continuous recording. Stop it again, press the play button, then you can see exactly what I've recorded. You can see the resolution, 14-bit lossless, and you can see how much frames are captured. So if you stop that and select exact, it's pretty much just going to skip through all the frames, so you don't have to go frame by frame, and you can quickly check what you've captured. And that's pretty much how I run 2.5K mode with these options. So the next preset we're going to look at is 2.8K mode. Press menu, and if I press the trash can again, you can see my raw video resolution is 2.8K, and then I've got the same settings, 10-bit and 2.35 to 1. But like I said, for custom mode 1 it's going to be set to 1080 mode. I'll set these for you in the different custom modes and I'll give them proper names. Now shutter fine tuning you don't really have to have on. I normally keep it for the 1080 mode or 2.5K. Just for simplicity's sake, you can leave that off to avoid light flickerings. And then there you go, ratio 2.35 to 1. 2.8K mode can't shoot 16:9, you can max at 2.35 to 1, so keep that there. Press the menu button, press info to check your framing, and then when you're ready hit the record button and then go back to real time. Now if you want to learn about 4 or 5K time-lapse recording, I've done a separate video on that, you can check that in the description below. But the next favorable option is the 5K anamorphic FRTP, and you can see there's like this big black bar here. That's because of your aspect ratio. So if I go ahead and do 16:9, press the menu button, and you can see it's back to normal. This is the resolution it captures, and then you also want to set bit depth to 10 or 12-bit. Ratio you can select either 2.35 to 1 or 16:9, it works absolutely fine, and then it's continuous raw recording. Now again, this is not true 5K, it's not 1:1, it's 1:3, so it's pretty much upscaling in post to a 4K or 5K resolution. And then from here you can play with your overlays and your exposure. All the settings are pretty much the same for each mode. You just got to be wary of ratio and bit depth. So again, bit depth are for the higher resolutions, and for 1080 mode you don't really have to have 10-bit, you can just leave that to off. And that's pretty much it for all these different modes. I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to 1080, and that will be set for custom mode 1. Custom mode 2 will be 5K FRTP, custom mode 3 will be 2.5K, and custom mode 4 will be 2.8K RAW. And that's pretty much it for the RAW recording on the Canon EOS M and Magic Lantern RAW. Alright, so for the next part, we're going to look at grading the Magic Lantern RAW files. The first thing you need to download is MLV app. It's available for Linux, Windows, Mac. And so once you download that, you can pretty much put all your recorded files from your SD card, load them onto the software, and you can pretty much get up and running with Magic Lantern RAW editing. And on top of this, we're also going to look at my DaVinci Resolve workflow. I'm going to pretty much explain everything that I do to get a cinematic grading, and hopefully that should help you guys out. Alright guys, so this is MLV app, and this is what you use to process your RAW files captured with Magic Lantern RAW. So here it is, and usually you place your files into this interface, and then they all load up here. So once you have them, you can, play around with exposure, contrast, clarity, all these stuff that are similar to Photoshop and how you would edit, your photos. You've also got gradation curves and then tone mapping functions. So, you can turn your RAW files from the sensor into Alexa Log C or S-Log, pretty much whatever you work with, and then export from there. Now, I'm not going to go too much in depth because this is MLV app and I've made a separate tutorial for this, which you guys can check out in the description. But what I normally do is place my files in here and then export them as Cinema DNG uncompressed. From here you can do DaVinci Resolve naming scheme if you have a Blackmagic Pocket camera and that's what you're used to. Otherwise it will just go by the default name scheme. Now here you can see that export audio is muted. To unmute that, all you do is untick frame rate override and then you can get export audio. If you don't care about audio that much and you want to override your frame rate, go ahead and tick frame rate override and that will override say 25 FPS or 23.98 to 24 frames per second. And then when you're ready to export, you just go over here to export selected clips, save it to your desktop or your hard drive, and then it will export all those clips for you. Alright guys, here we are on DaVinci Resolve, and this is my project, the Canon EOS M RAW. This is pretty much what I drag all my files into every time I want to edit, and all my main settings are saved within this project. Now looking at this whole section, this is where all the main stuff take place. This is like your cornerstone of grading and editing and stuff like that. So you want to make sure you got these settings right before you start editing. And let's go ahead and check out color management. Now in my last DaVinci Resolve video, we looked at how to just start from scratch with a Rec 709, a very basic setup and workflow for Magic Lantern RAW, and I'd still recommend that if you're starting out. But if you want to get a bit technical with the colors and the skin tones and stuff like that, then these are my settings over here. So color science is DaVinci YRGB color managed, and then we got input color space and timeline color space set to RE-log C. The output color space is set to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, and then limit output gamut to Rec 709. So you can change these yourself if you like, if you're doing HDR, stuff like that. I just keep it at Rec 709. Alright, so timeline to output tone mapping. Normally it's set to none, but if you set luminance mapping, then it fixes all these issues with highlights and stuff like that. It recovers more of the dynamic range or the full spectrum of the camera. So I'm going to keep that with luminance around 5500. You can keep it at 500 nits if you like. I've just set it at this number. Then over here we have timeline to output gamut mapping. This is made for red cameras, high-end red, like Red Dragon, Red Helium and stuff like that. I've just set it to red IPP2 gamut mapping. It just provides really nice tone mapping and skin tones when I'm grading, and everything just looks really natural and just real life, realistic. And so I'll set that to red IPP2. And now my output tone mapping, this is set to high, and the highlight roll-off is set to soft. So the reason why it's set to high is because it just gives a skin a bit more punch. It looks flat before, so if you set it to high, you'll see that it's gonna, give you a better base to start off with. So you can see how flat this image looks. But when you set your output tone mapping to high, and you're going to see that it's just a better start. There's definitely less work to do in comparison to when it's set to none. You can see how flat that looks. Alright, so this is pretty much my go-to settings every time I'm editing. And then if you go over to the master settings, you can see my timeline resolution is set to 3840 by 2160. This is what I like to upscale it to. Whether I'm shooting 1080p or whatever, 2.8K RAW, it's always set to 3840 by 2160. Alright, so this is the editing section. I don't really edit much here. I leave that for Final Cut Pro X, which is where I prefer to do my editing. But, if you're used to this kind of stuff, then obviously you would do it here. Now, this is the main tab where I edit all my work. And you can see over here that nothing has been touched. Now, by default, decoding is set to Cinema DNG default. We're going to go ahead and select Clip. And that way we can edit all these stuff like color, temperature, and tint and exposure. And over here you can see the highlights, how they've been overblown. And this camera has around 11 stops or so of dynamic range. And if you go ahead and click highlight recovery, you can see that, boom, we've recovered the highlights, and this camera looks like a high-end cinema camera. So really, really cool stuff. I absolutely love this camera. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I've edited this footage. So let's reset the settings and I'll show you something really cool. Up the top over here, you click gallery, and I've saved my presets. So all the editing that I've done over here with exposure or curves and stuff, they've all been saved here. And if I just right click and select apply grade, you can see that the work that I've done in the past, all the editing is bang on. We got it again, and we can start, tweaking a few more settings from here. So in this clip, I've done the same thing. I can go back and apply the settings that I did in the previous time that I edited it. And you can see straight away it looks really, really good. I'm going to show you guys how I came across this, how I got this working. So I didn't really do much. You can see where the red dots are. They're the only two things that I touched, as well as camera raw. So color temperature wasn't touched, none of these except for lift and sharpness. So sharpness is set to 100, and then lift is adjusted according to these scopes here. So for 0, you want your shadows to be just touching 0. Now for highlights, I like them around 1000, and they're pretty much at 1000. So for the highlights, they're good to go. And you can see if you go above 1000 or a bit higher, they tend to start going white, which means you've clipped the highlights. And if you bring them slightly down, you can see that you're recovering the highlights very nicely with this awesome $200 cinema camera. Alright, that's it for camera raw. Let's go ahead and check color wheels. So this is pretty much all I touched. A bit of contrast, but I've just pretty much brought it up to about there. Obviously you can add a bit more if you want a bit more punch into it, but I think there's absolutely fine, so keep it there. Gamma is like your midtones in Final Cut Pro, and then gain is like your highlights, so increasing highlights and then gamma. So that's pretty much all I did, just fine tuning this stuff. And then the lucky last is the curves. All I've done is brought the middle part down, brought the shadows down just a little bit. And then for the highlights, I've just brought them up because these are generally muted. You'll see if I bring it down and then back up, you can see it looks much better. So this is how I like to keep my curves. I'm actually going to export these, upload them in the description below, and you guys can download these editing presets that I've saved, so keep an eye out for them. And that's pretty much it. 3 tabs and I'm good to go. Alright, so we've got this clip here. I'm going to go ahead and apply grade, and there you go. Now if you want to save stuff like this, all you got to do is right click and select grab still, so we'll do that. And then if you wish to save this to a particular folder, just right click it and select export. And if you have a LUT, you can do it with display LUT, but export is generally what I do, and then save them into my directed folder. Now I'm on the Mac, so I can press Option 1 and then go ahead to another scene, say this one, and then press Command 1 to paste all your settings. Alright, so now let's talk about creating a cinematic look. So let's go ahead and check out this clip here. You can see it's a bit warm, and I know that some people prefer to color correct before they grade. I just pretty much, paste my settings and then work from there. So I can see that the highlights are a bit overblown here, so I'm going to go ahead and do the highlights or the gain and bring that just a tad bit down until I recover the highlights, and you can see it's nicely done. Now to apply the LUTs, you go over here to the LUT section and then just apply any LUT that you have imported into DaVinci. I've got these LUTs. I don't really use much LUTs. I like to keep a normal natural grade, but if you want to get a cinematic look, let's go ahead and give it a shot. So let's go ahead and do teal and orange and just see what these ones look like. And you can see straight off the bat that looks extremely cinematic. I'd be really pleased if this was the final results. Oh, that one looks really moody. I like that. Alright, so let's go ahead and just apply this one, Marston Marble. Alright, so I like this one, Marston Marble, and I'm not going to apply it to this node. I'm going to go ahead and add another one. Alright, so I've created another node, and in general with DaVinci Resolve, I like to keep it nice and simple. I'd have a max of 2 to 3 nodes. Most of the times I only do 1, but if I'm using a LUT, then I've got an extra one here. So let's go ahead, apply Marston Marble. Anytime you want to adjust the strength of the colors of the LUT, you go to the key tab over here, and then you go key output. So it's on 100% strength, and you can obviously bring it down to scratch or to the basic, the original, which is 0, and you can just gradually or slightly bring it up until you're happy with the results. I personally think having it on full or 1 was like the best, so I'd keep around there. Select Option 1 and then go ahead to say this scene and then press Command 1 to paste the exact same settings. And look at that, that looks absolutely fantastic. And this is pretty much what I do each time I'm grading. I just copy the settings from the previous edit to all of these, and then just make minor adjustments in the camera raw, color wheels, or curves. These are the 3 that I touch. So paste it here, and you can see that it looks absolutely gorgeous. Let's go ahead and play with another LUT and just see what we can get. Alright, I like this one, and I can see that it's a little bit warm, and obviously if you want to change your temperature, it's just over here, and you can get some really nice looking footage. The curves haven't been applied because they've been done in the first tab, and we can go ahead and play around with that and just get a nice fine-tuned image. Alright, and that's pretty much it, guys. This is how I do all my editing. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. But this is pretty much my exact same workflow each and every time I do Magic Lantern Raw. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. This is the cheapest RAW cinema camera that money can buy. And as you can see, the quality footage you can get is really, really amazing. Of course, every camera has its drawbacks, but this is a great tool for learning manual focus, learning how to expose and stabilize your footage. And at the end of the day, you're only going to get better through the practice that you put in. My name is Zeke, hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe or leave a comment down below, and I'll be sure to check it out. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.